You are listening to the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Welcome to Earth Sky People Radio. Living in harmony with Mother Earth and awakening to an intergalactic society. With your host, Victoria Vives, founder of Reiki Wellbeing and co-founder of the Earth Sky People Movement. Any opinions expressed in Earth Sky People Radio do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any opinions expressed by Earth Sky People Radio's guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Earth Sky People Radio. Hello, this is Earth Sky People Radio with your host, your friend, and your soul family, Victoria Vives Khuong. You can find me at victoriavives.com. Today is Saturday, May 2nd, 2015. We are together in Earth Sky People Radio. Earth representing our connection with Mother Earth and nature, and Sky representing spirituality and life beyond the Earth. Extraterrestrial life, extra-dimensional. And today we have with us Dr. Lynne Kitei. Dr. Lynne is an internationally acclaimed physician and health educator who pushed aside her successful medical career to pursue the Phoenix Lights book, an internationally award-winning documentary project. She was leading the cutting-edge era of early disease detection and prevention as chief clinical consultant of the Imaging Prevention Wellness Center at the world-renowned Arizona Heart Institute in Phoenix, Arizona, until coming forward after 7 years of anonymity as a key witness to the historic and still unexplained mass sighting throughout Arizona on March 13, 1997. The Phoenix Lights documentary has won over a dozen international film festivals. Her website is thephoenixlights.net. Dr. Lynne, it is an honor to have you here with us today. Welcome to Earth Sky People Radio.
Oh, thank you so much, Victoria. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me and sharing our incredibly amazing, historic, and still unexplained Arizona mass sighting 18 years later.
Wow, amazing. And you know, your documentary was actually, I think it was the first believable evidence that I found that made so clear that there is an extraterrestrial presence on Earth. So as soon as I found it, I started saying all my people in Spain and people here, check this out, this is true. Because I mean, that is really, really credible information. It's not just like something that somebody made up. It's very well documented. How did you get introduced to the Phoenix Lights? And did you have any previous interest in the topic?
Very good questions, because I had no interest or knowledge in this topic at all before. My husband is also a physician, and I had a very close sighting to our home 2 years before the mass sighting. We live very high on a mountain surrounding the valley of Phoenix, and we have a panoramic view of the city skyline. So we know what planes and helicopters and street lights and car lights look like. We see the airport from our home. And I have to tell you, this was quite extraordinary. We saw three orbs. Actually, they were oval-shaped in a pyramid formation a little below us, because we're pretty high up in the mountain, that hovered about 50, 75 feet off the desert landscape, very treacherous ground. There was definitely nobody there. We live in a gated community. So I tried to take everything in mentally, and I always go back to this first sighting in 95, before thousands of people saw what I was seeing 2 years later, because I saw this up close and personal. And these were orbs, and I call them an orb, because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained, and it was a uniform amber color throughout, didn't glare at all. It was like an egg. Each one was like an egg on its side, and they were three distinct objects, and every other light out there glared. These did not glare. And I thought to myself, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it.
Right.
So I ran to our closet to grab my 35 millimeter camera that I keep handy to capture the beautiful sunsets here in Phoenix area. And my husband called me back because one wall of our bedroom is a window. And he calls me back and he says, get over here quick, one of them is disappearing. And as we watched, and this was really close, I mean, this was only 100 yards away from our home, the top orb, without budging, started to dim, as if on a dimmer switch, like mechanically. It started to implode and getting smaller and smaller and smaller, very slowly, until it was a dot. And then it was gone. But I have to admit, and I didn't admit this to anyone till after the mass sighting 2 years later, that even though it disappeared, it still felt like it was there. So where did it go? Okay, so I get on the balcony. I got a picture of the two lower orbs and immediately noticed an eerie silence as if time had stopped. It was very bizarre. And going through my mind as intently as I was watching these two lower orbs, I again have to admit that it felt like something was watching me. And going through my mind, I was thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. The next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to implode like the top one did. And I immediately took a picture of that. That was the only one that turned out at the time. In fact, if you go on the phoenixlights.net website, if you Google Phoenix Lights, it usually comes up first, and go to the photo page, you'll see that not only the topography, which I'll talk about in a second, but you'll see the first two pictures are of the 95 sighting. And what's really dramatic about that, number one, is that the same exact phenomena that I would capture on 35 millimeter 2 months before the mass sighting, 2 years later, and during the mass sighting on video is in the background in the same exact location in those pictures too, in 95. So whoever did this was around, okay? But what's really amazing is I didn't see anything that was even closely, remotely like these orbs until 2 years later, in January 97. And this is important data. Again, if you go to the photo page on the phoenixlights.net website, you'll see I actually saw a mile-wide formation of these lights, but at a distance that I captured head-on, turning into a V shape. And it was so unnerving. In fact, the first picture, I was shaking. You can see it's a little wavy because it was so unnerving not having an explanation, because I didn't even know who to show the pictures to in 95. I knew no one involved with the topic, and I didn't pursue it. I just wondered what this advanced technology was outside our bedroom window for 2 years. But here I see them at a distance, in an equidistant line, and then turning into a V. The next morning, I figured there must be a logical explanation, and other people must have seen this. It was massive. And so I called around. Excuse me. I found air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport that saw the same thing at the same time. And they admitted to me that not only were they alarmed because it actually appeared above Class B restricted airspace. Excuse me. There's a 30-mile radius around the airport that anybody that goes into that airspace, particularly 1,000 feet altitude, must call into the center of the airport. And nobody called the tower, so they looked on radar. Did not show up on radar. They took up their binoculars to look. And what they described were 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, massive span, over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something. But they couldn't quite see what it was attached to. And you would hear that over and over again during the mass sighting 2 months later, not only that description, but also of craft, which we'll get to. But anyway, they saw it. One of them was a meteorologist, and he said that it turned against the wind. Now, I was taking pictures while this was happening, and then elevated very slowly as a unit that went behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then finally, one of the air traffic controllers said, "Beats me." I said, "You're air traffic controllers. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace." They had no idea. And Victoria, they ruled out every conventional possibility, from flares to skydivers with lights to conventional aircraft to balloons to blimps, everything. And we kept in contact. And I kept on photographing these phenomena. I felt compelled to go out there, I guess the scientist in me, to document them on film up until and including March 13th. Now, for anybody that's not familiar with what happened here on March 13th, 1997, when the Hale-Bopp comet was very clear in the northwest sky, thousands of people were outside looking up at the Hale-Bopp comet, when they also caught a glimpse of a mile to 2 mile wide, in some very credible reports, either these lights that seem to be attached to something in a V shape or boomerang shape, or in a mile wide to 2 mile wide, or actual craft. Now, if you look on the GAP page, GAP, the Geospatial Animation Project page on the PhoenixLights.net, the Phoenix Lights Network website, you'll see that after a 12-year compilation of thousands of reports from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, the Village Labs, which was the clearinghouse here, a computer lab of all the reports that came in, as well as Arizona MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and the former Vice Mayor, Councilwoman Frances Barwood. She received over 1,000 reports, Phoenix Vice Mayor. It was compiled that if 2 or more people saw the same thing, there were 9 or 10 different crafts that people saw. Now, when you look at them, they're very different, by the way. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph into looking different, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade, which is what the investigators finally concluded, because there were multiple things happening at the same time for many, many hours. Now, if anybody, has looked at the media or listened to some of the shows out there, they usually talk about 1 or 2 events happening. There wasn't just 1 or 2 events. There were many, many events happening for many, many hours, not only weeks before. And there were other people that were also photographing the same phenomena for days before, like I was. But during March 13th, we have reports as early as daylight sightings at 3 p.m. of these phenomena, 5:30 by Native Americans in New Mexico, 7 o'clock hour in California, and actually about 11 o'clock there was a report by a pilot that their commercial airline and all the passengers, 140 passengers and crew, saw one of these craft, mile-wide craft, hovering right over Las Vegas. It covered Las Vegas. And at 3 a.m. the next morning, there was actually a call, and these sightings continued. The bulk of the reports came in from 8 to 10 o'clock, because that's when most people were outside. But they, as I said, were before and after. But at 3 a.m., there was a call to the National UFO Reporting Center by an alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base. And the very detailed recorded report, part of it is in our documentary, that one of these craft was hovering over the central Phoenix at 7th Avenue and Indian School, and military jets were sent out to intercept it, get gun camera film of it, and there are people that saw this happening. And as they got closer, the lights started to dim, and then the whole craft just disappeared and blinked out. And the crewman said that he was one of the people to help one of the pilots out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by it, and that Luke Air Force Base was on lockdown after that. So they were very aware that things were happening. And then at 5:30 the next morning, there was a crew from Boeing that came into work at Sky Harbor International Airport that reported one of these craft right over their tarmac. So this was happening for many, many hours and many, many events. And, the people were seeing these things at rooftop level. I mean, just listen to this technology. It was unbelievable that we haven't seen to this day, and it's 18 years later, that besides how massive these things were, 1 to 2 mile wide, It went rooftop level over people's heads. Some people looked into
My
these giant
goodness.
wells. They described them as canisters of spinning, spinning energy or light. Other people saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. Other people saw these craft as what happened with the military, just take off at blink speed without even dispersing the air. And we're talking totally, totally silent. So whoever did this, okay, not only wanted to be seen, but the technology itself was so advanced with everything that's happening in the world today. If we did have this kind of technology, whoever did this, wouldn't you think we would have seen it by now?
Wow. Yes, it's like, do you have any insight as to where these ships were coming from, or did you have any possibility of connecting later and discover more about who is behind this?
Well, first of all, these phenomena, and I had no knowledge of this at the time. In fact, I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I'll give you a little anecdote. I produced video and workbook curriculums for the last 30 years on vital health issues like AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse. They're currently being distributed by Discovery Education. And I was invited 6 months before to the Gila Bend Indian Reservation to present my substance abuse program. Now, if you look on the photo page on the phoenixlights.net website, you'll see the first picture shows the topography. There's a mountain range, two mountain ranges that we look at from our vantage point. One on the left is South Mountain, and the other, a few miles back, is the Estrella Mountain Range. Now, the South Mountain is just south of the airport, and the Estrella Mountain Range, in between South Mountain and the Estrellas, is the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, very sacred ground. And they invited me 6 months before the mass sighting to present my substance abuse program, which I did, and got friendly with the principal and some of the board people. And they don't talk to outsiders, but after the mass sighting, I noticed that, and it's right there, and the 35 millimeter pictures cannot be denied, and I always say the data speaks for itself. These phenomena keep popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I called them up, and I said, did anybody see strange lights on March 13th? And they started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And they said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. It's part of their culture. I had no idea. That was the first I had heard of it. And, of course, I started investigating this aspect of the whole, mass sighting and phenomena, and learned that indigenous cultures worldwide not only have accepted these phenomena, very similar phenomena, if not identical phenomena, for centuries. They've been around since human documentation began, and native cultures right here in America, and I presume elsewhere, have protocols to invite them in. The Hopi here in Arizona have protocols to invite them in. They believe that they are other intelligences that are coming to give them guidance or comfort or inspiration. And it's a very interesting concept when you think of it. So they're not frightened of them. And that's another thing that I must say, that in 18 years now, since the mass sighting, there has not been not one report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights. I can't speak for other things, but I can speak for the Phoenix Lights phenomena, and they're appearing worldwide. And to answer your question, Victoria, I don't know what they are, but I know that they are. And that it's time we get this topic out in the open and address it, accept it, and study it so we can find out who's driving these things, as well as move forward in our own evolution. Because there is so much more to this story. I mean, when you look back at the Native American connections and, how they have felt how important our earth is and to have balance and so forth, there's a whole other story that happened with the Phoenix Lights that has to do with how it affected people in real time. And, we can talk about that. I can talk about how the fact that, there was no investigation, no explanation for months. It was uncanny because here these phenomena passed right over people's heads. Some people said they could throw a rock at it. It was that close. And yet there was nothing. There was nothing from our government or military.
Right.
They, when asked, they would say, "What? Something happened on March 13th?" Until, and this is when it gets really interesting when you see how the story unfolded. On June 18th, 1997, months later, and this is without anything happening and any explanation. And I called the military several times, all the bases around Arizona, and they were just as curious as we were. Suddenly, there was a front-page article on USA Today that opened our sighting to international scrutiny. We were deluged overnight, and we didn't have social media at the time. This was 97. Mm-hmm. And they, too, once they talked to the witnesses, their stories were so detailed and so heartfelt that they, too, were asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? Mm-hmm. And the very next day, we get an announcement from our former governor, Fife Symington, that he was calling a press conference that afternoon to reveal the culprit of the lights over Phoenix. Now, keep in mind, it wasn't just Phoenix. It was statewide and beyond. Right. But this is what he announced. And everybody took it seriously. He comes marching out, one of his aides, in a giant alien head costume and made a mockery of the whole thing. This was so very disconcerting. Especially for parents that were with children that saw this thing go right over them and they're trying to make a joke out of it. Well, that kind of put a lid on things. And in fact, I called the military again and asked them if they knew what was going on. And I get a call a month later. This is July 24th, 1997, from one of the heads of PR at the Air National Guard. And she says, "Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March." And I said, "You do? That's great. What was it?" And she says, "Do you believe that no one ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard? And the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off flares in Operation Snowbird," which I later learned meant diversionary tactical maneuvers in military terms, which it's been a diversion ever since. But at any rate, she says that must be what some people saw. Now, I said, "So when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town?" She said, "March 1st to the 15th. I said, "Were they in town in January?" She says, "Oh, no." I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Absolutely not." I said, "I have 35 millimeter photographs of the same exact phenomena in the same exact location as March 13th, confirmed the next morning in both cases as hovering over Class B restricted airspace, 1,000 feet altitude by air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor." And she says, "You never told me that." And then I said, "Besides, you're trying to tell me," and I was looking for any logical explanation. I said, "You're trying to tell me that flares, military Lu 2, they're called, illumination flares that cannot keep a formation. They're dropped from aircraft with a parachute. They drift and drop haphazardly with the wind within minutes. They have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself, and they are meant to illuminate the area around it so that missiles will go to them instead of aircraft." And not one person to this day described that, okay? Mm-hmm. And I said, "You're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation traverse the entire state in a rock-solid, equidistant, mile-wide V array for many hours?" And she says, "I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you." Well, I'm still waiting, okay? But what was interesting, Victoria, is that, that really put a lid on things. And I can only imagine whoever came up with that was brilliant, because the video doesn't do the orbs justice. In video, they're much smaller than in real life. They're white, they flicker, and for the untrained eye, they could be mistaken for flares, I guess. But whoever thought of it was brilliant, because the only hard evidence, really, essentially, from the mass sighting were the videos, because people that tried to take pictures of the, and those people don't walk around with cameras, by the way, and in those days we had the clunky cell phones that didn't have cameras in them yet, but those that did try to take pictures, the craft were so big and they blocked out the stars that their pictures didn't turn out. So essentially they could blow off people's stories, but they could not blow off the videos, the handful of videos. So they had to come up with something, and whoever came up with the flare thing was brilliant. But at any rate, even if that's true, that it was just a ruse, okay, if it's military, do it again, right? Well, 3 years later, the only elected official here that even asked for an investigation. She didn't see it, but many of her constituents had contacted her, was Councilwoman Phoenix Vice Mayor Frances Barwood innocently in May during a council meeting asked for an investigation, and she was plastered. I stayed anonymous, by the way, Victoria, for 7 years, and I'm so glad that I did. I did not want to come forward.
I know. And why? Just so that to make sure that people is not going to be mocking about this story, or
yes, that's the thing. She got so ridiculed. She had jokes in the paper about her. I mean, it was awful. Anybody that came forward, I was so happy I stayed anonymous, just doing my own homework, because in those days, in '97, you didn't talk about UFOs. I mean, if you did, you were laughed at, snickers, fun made of you. It wasn't pretty, okay? And, I ended up pushing my whole medical career aside for 4 years, actually 7, but for 4 years, to try to find a logical explanation. Ended up with a 750-page journal of incredibly credible data that ultimately I went back to work as a chief clinical consultant at the Arizona Heart Institute, while I edited down the best of what I found, because the more I looked, the more I found. Just unbelievably credible data that ultimately, after much soul searching, as a scientist, as a physician, as an educator, and an experiencer, how could I stick it in a drawer? And I finally thought, you know what, it is what it is. I mean, the data speaks for itself. People can make up their own minds. And finally came forward in 2004 with the first edition of the book, and then shortly thereafter produced the film, which I thought it was really important for people to see what other people, the true witnesses and the experts, really felt about the mass sighting. And we've been very, very fortunate and honored that we've won so many international film festival awards.
Yes.
And it keeps on evolving. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell is in it. He was actually being conferred with during the mass sighting, which is pretty amazing. I didn't know that until I interviewed him. And he is fabulous. And we have pilots and military and a 911 police operator that was on duty that night, and the police said they only got a few calls, and she came forward after she retired a few years ago and said, we got hundreds and hundreds of calls. So, so what was interesting, though, and I just want to add this, is that 3 years later, in 2000, the Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood was running for Secretary of State to get answers for the mass sighting. And one of her announcements was that she wanted to see a reenactment of the Phoenix Lights. And many of us did, of course. And again, I was open. I've always been open to any logical explanation. If it was flares, and by the way, if it was military, shame on them. Okay, that it was that they would go right over people's heads and then deny it for so long. But if it was flares, okay, do it again. And I knew that I had pictures not only during the mass sighting, 2 months before the mass sighting, but when we went back to the pictures a year after the mass sighting from '95, which we can get to later if we have time, because they were analyzed by Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee, and he came up with an unbelievable conclusion. But at any rate, in those pictures, he also noticed that the same exact phenomena was in the same exact location there as well. So, and when you think about, some of the witnesses saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it. Is that what happened in '95? I mean, it's there. I mean, as we have the close orbs that we were focused on, and these, this line of other orbs that were at a distance. So I knew that whoever did this did it multiple times. So if it was military, fine, do it again, right? Well, they made a big announcement right before the 3rd anniversary that they were sending off flares to 3 National Guards. We're sending off flares to show everybody the Phoenix Lights. And if you go on the news page on the phoenixlights.net website, and I think it's right in the middle, there's one block that is the Arizona Family CNN affiliate. They have a report that's so wonderful that shows what they did, and it was a joke. Okay, they tried to make a triangle. It was upside down. It fell apart immediately. It had huge smoke trails, just like flares do. But it is a great report if you want to take a look at it. Now, the other thing, which I didn't even get to share with you, is that one of the things that, and there are a couple really cool things that I can share. One of the things that the Gila Indian Native Americans shared with me was that not only has this been, they've been seeing these for centuries, but there's petroglyphs, there's drawings etched out in the stones in the mountains that are identical to what my husband and I saw, the pyramid of three orbs, and the boomerang as well, which is one of the other videos. And also they said that's how the Estrella Mountains got its name, because the Estrella means star in Spanish, and when the Spaniards first came out, they heard these stories, or they might have even seen the same phenomena and named it the Estrellas, gateway to the stars. And they feel that there's actually a portal or gateway there that these things come in. And I have to say, I mean, I'm not saying definitively, it's just speculation, but if you look at my photo page, because I've continued to photograph these phenomena, they keep popping up right in the same area. So I don't know, but that's an interesting aside. And the Native American connection is certainly a strong one. The other thing that was really amazing to me is that as I was interviewing other witnesses, a number of them shared that they had had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. And that blew me away because I did too. And I go into the whole thing in my book. And I was 8 years old, and I thought, wow, could there possibly be a connection between this Phoenix Lights and my near-death experience, and most of all unexplained phenomena? Is there a connection? And I started looking into that aspect, and lo and behold, I started finding very credible data at university level. The Omega Project, which is like a 4-inch book by Dr. Kenneth Ring at University of Connecticut, and Dr. Bruce Grayson, who is a near-death experience expert, and Dr. Raymond Fowler, who did the Andreessen case, and many others, were finding a direct connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it was near-death experience, out-of-body experience, or unexplained aerial phenomena that had a mystical light associated with the experience, not only in the experience itself, and if you realize, I lay it out really simply in the book, but the experience itself is just mind-boggling that it is so similar with all unexplained phenomena, but the most profound thing for me was the after effect, the awakening, the enlightenment that happens within an individual who has an unexplained phenomena experience, whatever it is, that changes their life forever. I started calling all unexplained phenomena an up, UP, and up, because it is an up. It is so positive, the connectedness that person feels to the universe and to the earth and to each other that may never have been felt before, but now changes their life forever. And this happened in real time as well as long term with the Phoenix Lights. And by the way, you don't have to have an up experience to have this positive transformation. All you need to do is open your mind and your heart and learn about it. So I urge people to just learn about it and to really be open to the possibilities, because you'll start seeing serendipities and things. I don't believe in coincidence anymore, just like what happened with the Native Americans and so many other things as the story unfolded. But certainly during the mass sighting, the movie Independence Day was very popular about 6 months before, and we were so inundated with threat, and harm, that, our mindset when we see something that's really strange is to be frightened, okay? Well, that's what happened with kids that saw this mile-wide deformation of lights coming towards them on March 13th, 97. They were jumping up and down, Independence Day.
Oh, wow.
But as it got closer, a calmness took over everyone, a connectedness to the phenomena, that after it went over, the kids wanted to run after it or have their parents get in the car and chase it. And we're talking real time. Some people had telepathic messages. I mean, I get into that in the book. And, the other thing is the long-term effect of the Phoenix Lights. Till today, I still have people contacting me that share that their lives have never been the same. I mean, not only do they know in their heart of hearts, it's not believing, it's a knowing that we are not alone in the universe.
Yes.
But when you see this transformation in real time, that doesn't happen with blimps or balloons or helicopters. You know what I mean?
Exactly, exactly. It seems
And
that it's
yeah,
something really deep in consciousness, like an awakening of
yes,
consciousness. And I
yes.
feel that perhaps, I don't know if our governments are kind of limiting our consciousness by putting these things away, but I feel it's so important for us to really continue sharing this information. And I'm so proud of all your work and your commitment, even risking that some people may not believe it, but you are out there sharing it, because I feel that it's going to really bring disclosure, and it's going to bring a growth in our consciousness. So I really appreciate that.
No, well, I appreciate that you are having me on and that you do what you do, because every little bit helps. I mean, the information is there if people want to learn and grow or not. You know, everybody comes from a different background, from a different upbringing, from a
Right.
different belief system, worldview, and some people can't deal with this. Some people don't want
Right.
to deal with it, and that's
That's true.
okay. That's okay. Everybody in their own time. But that was one of the reasons that propelled me to come forward, because the information is so compelling. There is so much, and I have statements from presidents and CIA and
Wow.
other government, military pilots, and so forth that confirm that we're being visited. I mean, there is definitely something going on here. Again, I don't know
Exactly.
who they are or where they're from, but there's something going on beyond our own reality cube that really needs to be addressed and really needs to be studied. And, you know, that's why I came forward. So, yeah, I mean, there is much more to this story, but I am very honored that you have me share it today. And, hopefully people will take a look at the website. It's free and it's
Yes.
packed with information, as well as the book and the documentary. Because when you hear it from the people themselves, it really does make a big difference, because it's they're so heartfelt and it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, over and over again when I hear from people, that they've experienced something that's not only real to them, but it has impacted their life profoundly. I mean, we have people that have gone into the peace movement, that have gone into the environmental movement, that even changed their eating habits from they don't eat meat anymore. I mean, they're very, very conscious of what they're doing. I mean, that's what happens with an up experience, that you're changed forever and you're much more aware, and that's the message here. The message of the Phoenix Lights for sure, and they're happening worldwide, by the way. All you need to do is go on YouTube and plug in Phoenix Lights. And what's really interesting is when I came forward in 2004, and obviously it's not just me, it's all the wonderful people that have come forward, including the former governor who mocked the sighting in '95,
Right.
came forward
Yes.
in 2000, right after the 10th anniversary, to say that he saw it
Yes.
and that it was otherworldly. So, I mean, and the more credible people that come forward and share, the more it's going to seep into, as you said, into the mass consciousness that something is really going on here, that, something is gracing our skies. And actually, when you look at the other side of the whole equation, and the interdimensional side of the equation, and that's why I'm sharing for the first time, after keeping it private for over a dozen years, the data that was analyzed by Dr. Bruce Maccabee of my closed sighting, the pictures from my closed sighting, and the full report is on the website, and also I share it in the book. But he analyzed those pictures and not only found that the same phenomena was in the background, as I mentioned, as 2 months before the mass sighting and during the mass sighting, but also he saw that the skyline was much different. And, what I shared with you is what I remember of the closed sighting. I don't even remember the last light going out or going inside. I never looked at the clock. But, he said to me that, I had mentioned that it was like a 2 to 3 minute deal, and he said I have to confirm it with my husband, who would not talk about it. Interestingly, I mean, I was all in wonder and awe, and And he just did not, everybody reacts differently. He did not want to talk about it. But I finally sat him down, and this was 3 years later, and asked him how long that sighting was. And he said, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. Well, I go back to Dr. Maccabee, and he said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He said, look at the pictures. And again, if you're anywhere near a computer and you can look on the photo page, the data speaks for itself. He said the difference between the first and the last picture of the skyline itself is very significant. I said, what do you mean? He said, there are many more groups of lights that are on in the first picture. We're talking not just individual lights, but groups of lights that are off in the last picture. I said, okay. He said, that doesn't happen in a couple of minutes. He said, I'd like you to do an experiment. He said, go out on the balcony and look at the sky, take pictures of the skyline from approximately the same spot, one night every hour, the next night every half hour. I actually did it a third night every 15 minutes. And he said, and then we'll check it out and see when these lights start changing. Well, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 when we're home. And my husband called me out of the bath initially to see the sighting. And so let's be conservative and say that it all started at 9 o'clock, at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, excuse me. The lights of the city started going out at 9 o'clock, and the last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. So I said, okay. He said, can I present this case at the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network International Symposium 1999 in Washington, D.C.? I said, you know what, Dr. Maccabee, this is your baby. I would have never noticed this data. I have no clue where you're going with this, but just keep my name out of it, which he did. I mean, it was only a handful of people that knew that the data that was out there, because I let it out there gratis, was coming from me. I said, just keep me out of it. Just, share the data. That's fine with me. Well, he shared it in 1999, and again, I didn't tell a soul, okay, until I came out with the latest edition of my book, that he presented it as the first and probably the only that we know of analyzed and authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. Now, that's pretty heavy, okay?
Wow.
Now, what I told you is what I remember. But the reason that I'm sharing it now is because, number one, I don't believe in coincidence anymore. And if I have this data, maybe it's important, I'm just putting it out there. People can decide for themselves or whatever, and hopefully science will pick up on it. Because, number one, our concept of time, linear time, is very primitive. Past, present, and future is probably not what time really is, okay?
Right, that's
so
true.
That's number one, okay? And I have to admit, when I went out on the balcony and I was staring at these two lower orbs, I immediately noticed an eerie silence as if time had stopped. I mean, it was just bizarre. So what is time, number one? And number two, quantum physics and quantum mechanics is starting to catch up now, with the bubble theory and string theory, that there might be 10 or 11 different dimensions out there along with ours. Well, if there are other times and spaces right now along with ours, why is it such a leap to think that there might be other intelligences in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited?
Right.
So that's why I'm sharing the data now, and we'll see where it goes, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and also what you shared brought an idea, that is that the time seemed to stop and disappear when that happened to you, but that also happens when we are in an accident or near-death experience situation, so there may be some relationship between those situations, as you mentioned before, that they were linked in some way.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely possible. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, time, we have our own concept of time, and time may actually be spherical. I mean, there's so many other possibilities that, we're just starting to learn. I mean, our science is very primitive. We've, really been told that we don't have the capabilities that we do. I mean, everybody has the capabilities, psychic capabilities, and intuitive capabilities, and you can train yourself to go out of body. And
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard of remote viewing, but
Yes,
that's another
yes.
another thing that our government and military has used in the
Exactly.
past. And it seems that we've been kept so long in a reality box that
Yes.
may not be the reality that's really out there. So it's food for thought. And again, I'm just trying to put the information out there and let people decide for themselves.
And you just celebrated the 18th anniversary. How you feel that these 18 years have transformed the situation in regards to extraterrestrial life, UFO themes? What do you think has been the evolution in these 18 years?
Oh yeah, I mean when you talk about the positive transformation, not only with the media, because I have to say it's come full circle. I mean, when I came forward in 2004, and again, I mentioned the governor and other credible people coming forward and the witnesses and so forth. Um, the official and accepted, except for the witnesses and investigators at the time in 2004, was that the Phoenix Lights were merely military illumination flares, which was like so frustrating. You can only imagine how frustrating that was for someone like
Right.
myself that knew that there was so much more to this story. Well, we're talking a little over 10 years later, and now, and again, look on YouTube, when people see around the world similar phenomena, the orbs or these giant V or triangle craft, right away they point and say, there's the Phoenix Lights. And that is truly amazing and really rewarding that people are learning and growing and taking note and looking up. I tell people to look up all the time. And certainly most things can be explained. Let me say that right off. Most anomalies can be explained. Only a small percentage cannot. But just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may
Exactly.
just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. So again, it's really important that we just get this out in the open already and stop with the snickering and the laughing. And I think we've come a long way. I mean, I know that NASA and other entities have slowly but surely let out information that there's many other Earth-like planets. In fact, just this past year, NASA came out with the announcement that there's like 500 billion other galaxies out there. I mean, the Hubble and the Kepler telescope have really changed the face of time and space as we know it, because they've shown us that there are other possibilities out there for life. We know that the building blocks of life are out there, the amino acids and nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. Our one galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, is 12 to 14 billion years old. Our solar system is a very small a very young solar system. It's only 4 to 6 billion years old. So there are scientists now postulating that there could be intelligent, sentient entities out there, billions of years ahead of us. So, I mean, that is like so mind-boggling. And, the possibilities are endless. So it's like enough already. We've got to really talk about this and
Exactly.
address it and really get it out there. And more people are. I mean, people ask me, well, what about the cover of you know what? It doesn't matter to me personally. I mean, the government and military have their own jobs to do and whatever. This is a true grassroots effort. What I am doing is a true grassroots effort. In fact, now that the book and the documentary have gotten lives of their own, I am working on a curriculum, a comprehensive curriculum for youth, which is my passion, from 4th to 12th grade, called Out of the Box, The Adventures of Sue, F-O, Field Observer, and Hugh, H-U-G-H, Hugh F-O, and he's a little alien. And we have a wonderful Disney illustrator, Mark Mekas, who is just so talented, who's already completed the workbook is based on the Phoenix Lights mass sighting. And wonderful teachers, Kate Hooker, who is just amazing. She's been working on a pilot program with kids in her school for a couple of years, and they participate in trying to give us direction on what kids would enjoy. And, we're talking a very comprehensive curriculum from the history and crop circles and the math, the geometry and the art and all kind of critical thinking. What if we're not alone? How would that change our world? And, what would we tell them about us? So it's really important, and kids love this stuff. I have to tell you, that's what prompted me to do the documentary in the first place, because I was at the Arizona Heart Institute when I came out with the first edition of the book in March of 2004, and I was contacted by a number of filmmakers, and I wanted so badly to do a film coming from my video and workbook curricula background, but I had no time. I was working 7 to 7 at the Heart Institute, doing radio programs like this into the night, and then Barnes & Noble and border tours of the book on the weekend. And one of the filmmakers, Steve Lance, was very persistent, and he said his parents live here. And his dad actually is a physician as well. And he said, I'm coming to visit, and I'm bringing my equipment with me, and we're going to start filming in May. And I said, whoa. I said, first of all, I have no time. And secondly, I stayed anonymous for 7 years, and I really stayed anonymous. I did not want to come forward. I said, I don't know if the professors who could lose their grants, I was told, if they even utter the word UFO at university level, and witnesses and I take confidentiality as a physician very seriously, that contacted me after I came forward, if they would do it. And I said, first of all, let me find that out in the first place, if we even have anybody that will be in it. And number one, that was amazing, because everyone except one person who came on later immediately said they would do it. Professors, experts, witnesses, military pilots. I mean, it was amazing. But the other side was about the same time I was invited to present at this topic, which I was amazed. A couple parents had seen me at Barnes & Noble and arranged for me to come to a private middle school to present it to the school and parents and teachers, which blew me away, because at that time, as I said, it certainly was a topic that would probably be addressed. And I walked in to this auditorium, and there were 200 middle school students. You could hear a pin drop. It was unbelievable. They were sitting on the edge of their chairs. I mean, they thirst for this knowledge. And it was the first time that I realized that there is nothing, and I mean nothing, in our history books about this topic. Right. And I've been wanting to do this for many, many years. And, and I have to say, when I asked the group, I said, how many of you believe that we're alone in the universe? Not one hand went up. And I said, how many believe that we are not alone in this universe? Every hand went up. And, the kids know. They just know. I mean, it's like, duh. It's like, come on, we adults have to catch up here. So anyway, so I'm working on that, and hopefully we'll have that finished by the start of the new school year. I'll keep everyone appraised on the Phoenix Lights Network website, and also if anybody's out there on Facebook, we have a page, Phoenix Lights Network Facebook page, where I try to put up weekly posts for everybody, so that particularly about the Phoenix Lights phenomena. And I'm going to be speaking, presenting at the Contact in the Desert conference, which is over.
I'm going to be there.
Oh, you'll be there?
Yes.
You'll get to meet. Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to be presenting on Friday. It's the last weekend in May. I'm going to be presenting on the 29th. The conference is the 29th to the 31st. I'll be presenting how the story unfolded through the media, which is really fascinating in and of itself, because, again, serendipitously, I don't believe in coincidence anymore, but a couple weeks before the mass sighting, and this is kind of a fun story, I knew no one that knew anything about this stuff. So a couple weeks before the mass sighting, even though the video doesn't do it justice, I was showing the video to some of my friends, and this is how close I was. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. So I called him up. I told him I, was seeing these lights. He hadn't heard about it, but again, other people were seeing them too. And I told him I had a picture, which was the only one that turned out at the time from '95, that I would like someone of credence to take a look at and tell me what it is. Mm-hmm. And he refers me to a field investigator for the following Wednesday. On Tuesday, he called to say that he couldn't be there on Wednesday, that the then state director's mom had passed on Sunday. Can we postpone it? And I walk in Friday morning with this video in hand. I mean, it was like amazing that he says to me, did you see the mass sighting? And it was like, no, but I have, I don't know. I mean, I saw something similar to 2 months ago, and I took pictures of it last night. He said, great, because NBC was going to be there in half an hour to interview him. And I said, whoa, I'm out of here. I don't know if it's a hoax or military or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's not about me. It's about the data. Take a copy of it. And I sat at the, and I said, share it with whoever you want to share it with. And I called the, air traffic controllers. They confirmed that they had seen it in the same spot again. And that afternoon, the day after the mass sighting, I sat at the TV to see if anything would be on. And the first news that afternoon, on the 14th, my video was plastered on every news station. It was really exciting, I have to tell you. And by 9 o'clock, a couple other videos came out that were spectacular. An arrowhead, a couple of boomerangs that were taken after 10 o'clock. Mine and the arrowhead were before 10 o'clock. And it was like, whoa, thousands of people saw what I saw. And that's what really prompted me to not only keep a record of everything, which I'm going to be sharing, some of the, reports that, initially, particularly, no one has a record of it but me. I mean, I was like, going from one station to the other trying to record them on the VCR. It was like crazy. So that's really interesting. And then that afternoon, on the 29th, at the Contact in the Desert conference, and I hope that you'll join me there, I'll be talking more about how the phenomena affect people and how you can connect with these phenomena as well. Because the consciousness aspect of this is so very, very important. And it's amazing that, way back in 2004, when I went to, when I decided that, I was going to share this publication, and I met with HarperCollins and Simon & Schuster and Random House and Time Warner. Every one of them said, this is two books. This is a UFO book, and it's a spiritual book. Yes. I said, no, you don't get it. That's the important part of this. It has to be one book, because the Phoenix Light is waking us up to our spirituality. And I'll get more into that and the consciousness part of it in my workshop. And then I'll be part of a panel Saturday night, and I hope you'll join us there too.
Beautiful.
With some big disclosure speakers, Richard Dolan, as well as Steve Bassett, and I believe astronaut Story Musgrave is on that panel. Because that's why I came forward. I mean, it's time we get this out in the open and disclose the truth, and so that's what we're doing. So I hope that people will join us there and on Facebook as well, Phoenix Lights Network Facebook page, because I'll be putting up.
And for those who want to get the book and have all the information, they can also go to thephoenixlights.net, right?
Correct. And the book itself is the best discount I always advise people is on Amazon and Kindle, and the documentary is there as well. So I hope that people will check it out.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and I'm so excited about all the things that you are sharing, and thank you so much also for your commitment to it, because I feel that it takes a lot of dedication. I mean, you have been moving everything in order to make this happen, and even leaving a little bit your previous career. So this is very valuable for everyone, and it is very precious. Any message for our listeners before we complete this show?
Just as you keep looking up.
Yes, I have to do that more.
Keep
for
looking
sure.
up, and that's more ways than one. Okay, more ways than one. Keep looking up, and thank you again. And I do hope that that everybody will check out, the book and the documentary and our Facebook page as well as the website. And I look forward to meeting you at the Contact in the Desert conference in May. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, talk to you soon. Okay, and thank you for everyone that tuned in today. And some announcements very quickly. If you are near Los Angeles, you can join us in person tomorrow for our full moon shamanic drumming circle. Just go to reikiwellbeing.org. And next Saturday, we will have with us Andrew D. Bashago back in our show, sharing more in depth about life on Mars, time traveling and teleportation with Tesla technologies, and much, much more. He will be running for president in 2016. All the archives of my shows, both in video and audio, as well as all the information about upcoming shows, are available at victoriavives.com/radio. So I will leave you now with the Enlightenment Evolution Network announcements. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye. Okay, and now, as you know, this is a network, it's the Enlightenment Evolution Network. So, I'm going to just share with you the different shows that we have. On Mondays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, we have Heart to Heart Talk Radio with Daniel Scranton. On Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific Time, we have Soulful Preneur with Rachel Arkelaus and Megan Crandall-Meyer. On Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, we have the Enlightenment Evolution Hour with Rob Gauthier, the creator of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. On Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, we have Consciousness Evolution Hour with Philip Malika. On Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, The Earth Experience with Kalina Angel. On Saturdays, like today, at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, is Earth Sky People Radio with yours truly, Victoria Vives Khuong. On Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, About Oneness with Karen Newman. And finally, Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, we will have very soon the Resonance Intention with Soul and Neil Gaur. Okay, bye for now. You are listening to the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Welcome to Earth Sky People Radio. Living in harmony with Mother Earth and awakening to an intergalactic society. With your host, Victoria Vives, founder of Reiki Wellbeing and co-founder of the Earth Sky People Movement.
I